Welcome back. This is the morning show. Now, I'm not often one to be nervous for interviews, right? I'm quite confident. But I have to say that when I heard that Dr. Judy Dlamini is coming to studio, I had to put on my power suit. I had to channel my inner her and make sure that I'm, just get myself ready for quite an insightful and enjoyable conversation. Now, we're sitting with her this very morning because we're about to actually talk about her book, The Other Story. And I'm looking forward to sitting down with Dr. Judy Dlamini to talk about it. And she joins me in studio to talk about this book. She talks to African leaders. But if you remember her other book, Different But Equal, also came out a few years ago. So this is more of like a sequel, and we'll get to know exactly what inspired it. Ma, thank you for your time and welcome.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be here, Dumela. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much. And I was just telling you, during the break that I enjoyed Different But Equal. But what I appreciate about The Other Story is that you took it outside the borders of South Africa by speaking to other African business leaders. Why was it important to tell that African story?
You know, it was quite important that I not only covered African leaders, they had to be from different parts of the continent, they had to be different age groups. Because you actually reach different people if you target a certain age group. Some are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and even a 98-year-old, Richard Mponya.
Yes.
Yes. Why The Other Story? You know, in the book I talk about one of the TED Talks that I enjoyed by Chimamanda Ngozi, titled The Danger of a Single Story. And the danger of a single story, especially when it comes to Africa, is that it's negative stories, it's thugs, it's this, but we're bigger than that. And unless we share the stories of Africans that are just successful, who care about themselves, respect themselves, and give back to communities, the children that are growing up will see themselves in the negative stories that they are actually bombarded with. So it's up to each one of us to tell that positive African story till the child sees himself or herself as one of them.
I appreciate that because growing up, I know that from school, in the different subjects that we took, I often got a sense that, from the education system, Africa is where donations are sent. Africa is where the aid is sent. I didn't have enough representation growing up of self-made business leaders, activists who took matters into their own hands. Is that why it was important for you as well to make sure that, the young person that reads this book right now understands that you can stand on your 2 feet with your skin color in your age group and make a change?
It's everything to me. It really is everything, because just like you, I actually needed to remove myself from the negative narrative of who I'm supposed to be and create this narrative that makes me great. Now, you don't have to do that if we tell the positive African story, because there is a positive African story. There are so many African leaders that are doing so much, not just achievers in their own right, but going outside the norm to do something positive for other Africans. So I covered 12 such leaders. It was such an honor. And my prayer is that each one of us writes this positive African story, because 50% of the population of this continent, especially in the next, not even 20 years, will actually be youth. And we need to empower that youth. We need to inspire them. So I write to inform, to inspire, and to mentor.
You also gave a voice to our former First Lady, Mamzanele Mbeki.
That was amazing.
I can imagine. I could tell through, reading the book that you enjoyed that conversation, because you also deem it your fireside chats that you have. But she also touched on the economy and looking at, where we are right now in our economy in South Africa, with everything that the president has been saying about trying to attract investment. What stood out for you from that conversation with Uma Mbeki?
Usis Zanele, she's such it was an honor to have the conversation with her. Obviously, I know her outside that fireside chat. The humility and also just caring enough for the poor rural woman who has ideas, who has what it takes to do something to empower herself, but doesn't have access to funding. So to have someone in her position saying, I am going to make a change. It might be 500 Rand, it grows to 7,000 Rand, it grows, and she brings back the money. She actually feeds the family. She doesn't go and buy alcohol, not that I'm judging anyone, but whatever you give to her goes back to her family, and it grows, you know. And it's actually, there are many dimensions to Usisizanele, because you have a stereotype where we only have a unidirectional view of a human being.
Right.
First lady. You put her in that box, and you actually just expect her to do the first lady duties, whatever they are. To then see Usisizanele, the person, actually standing her own, having her own identity. So the message is bigger than just what she's done for rural women, which is great. Yeah. What she's done to grow the Women Development Bank and the trust, but also to say, you have to own your identity. Yeah. Just because you're married to someone who is a big name, who is a leader of a country, doesn't mean that you actually need to live in the shadow of that person, because you also made in the image of God. Right. You have a purpose, and you have to fulfill that purpose. Part of it is, supporting your husband, but part of it is just being you and doing what matters to you, which is exactly what she does.
I'm actually glad you mentioned that, because that's the messaging I think that's important for young people right now. And that's why I was particularly intrigued when you spoke to your husband, Ubab Sizwe. He was more interested in the youth. I mean, he's a former chairperson of NSFAS, but he kept on saying it's the young people that we need to plow into, that we need to invest in. How was that conversation? Was it any different from other dinner, table conversations you've had?
It was, especially the first 5 minutes, because I think he was the fourth person that I interviewed. Right. I had to be this person, professional, as opposed to hubby, wife. But, what's special about Sizwe is that, of course, integrity, of course, caring deeply about the youth, and caring deeply about the education of the African child, which is why he started Future Nation Schools group, which has many subsidiaries to it. But the most important thing is that he wants, as a family, we want to prepare the African child for the 21st century, for them to stand their own anywhere in the world, because they can. One of the things that he says is that he always says there is nothing in the DNA of an African child that makes him or her any less than anyone else. Yeah. These stories are just that, saying you can be, and you have everything it takes to be.
That is so powerful. And we need to start with, of course, African literature, books written by our own African leaders. Yes. Thank you so much for this book. Where can we get it?
You can get it at Luminance. Obviously, I have to start there. Yes. But there are some exclusive books that also have it, and it will be on Amazon soon. And I'll be launching it tomorrow at Future Nation Schools. It's important that I launch it at home, the one at Lyndhurst.
Absolutely. The Other Story by Dr. Judy Dlamini, a fireside chat with African Achievers. I appreciate this time.
Thank you so much, Tumela.
Thank you so much. Well, that is Dr. Judy Dlamini joining us. Make sure that you get yourself a copy. It's launching very soon. Get it at Luminance and other selected bookstores. You can also get it online. Order it. Trust me, you will be inspired, and you will see that you are an important part of a bigger picture in building our country and our continent. But on that note, you're still watching The Morning Show, and there's still lots more to come.